because I can't help myself from buying tools and stuff, I'm, you know, very quickly running out of space in my father's shop. You know, he's been gracious enough to let me sort of borrow or at least take over for the near term. We've built this bench. We've sort of tried to sort some tools and whatnot, but I'm running out of room, and I need to start, you know, assessing and getting rid of stuff. And this is one of the things that I've been walking over. This is an air compressor that I picked up for $10. The motor, you know, on its own is worth $10, and these little air compressors are just great. They're usually really quiet. This one I didn't even mess with it at all. The guy said $10. I just picked it up, put it in the truck. But when I got home, I realized that it doesn't turn. So let's get into this today and figure out whether this is going to go in the scrap pile or whether I can fix it or whatnot. And this will be interesting for anybody who's looking into getting an air compressor, to see the inner workings of these. They're really simple machines. They're a lot of fun to build. You do have to be careful with any sort of with compressed air. There's a lot of potential energy in this. You do not want a rusty tank. Horrible stories out there about tanks exploding and stuff like that. And I've seen people put self-tappers in the bottom and try to fix rusty things. Don't do it. Don't mess around with that kind of stuff. Make sure the tanks are in good shape. Make sure that, you know, you don't goof around with this kind of stuff, because it can kill you. And I would say the biggest thing with compressors is don't. Some people want to build like little sheds or something in the backyard and put their air compressor in there so they don't have to hear it. And then invariably they say, well, you know, I'll just put this can of gas in there. I'll just put some mineral spirits in here. I'll just, you know, can of diesel fuel or whatever. And what happens is when people do that, then the gas tank will vent off when it gets hot or whatever. And then the compressor will kick on and start to compress that, you know, air-fuel mixture. And I read a story about a guy, you know, where that happened, and it leveled the building. And when the inspectors came out, the OSHA inspectors or whatever, all they could find was pieces of skull matter and a wet spot where the guy used to be, because it was such a catastrophic explosion. So you don't want to turn into some wet spot on the garage floor somewhere. So, you know, keep these things in well-ventilated areas. Don't store gas and combustible things around them, because they can become, you know, very dangerous very quickly. So let's go ahead and take this shroud off of here and get into this motor and see what's going on. So we've got the compressor off now, and you can, let me get this set up over here so you can see what I'm dealing with is now it's completely seized. I can see I get a little bit of motion out of it, but there's something catastrophic wrong with this compressor. So let's go ahead and take the heads off of this and see if we can't get a look at what's going on inside this thing. Well, pretty obvious what the problem is. They left this sucker out in the rain. What happened is that this has a reed valve in here, and this valve is going to let air go in one way and then capture it with the check valve on the way out and direct it towards the tank. And you can see that what's happened is that this has become a funnel. There's supposed to be a piece of foam and a cap in here to divert it, but it's just turned into a funnel and directed the water right down into this chamber and rusted the crap out of everything. I don't know what the best way to maybe take these jugs off. Well, let me look at it a little bit more and see what we can do. Alright, I'm pretty sure that my diagnosis of it having water in it is true. Alright, so I went through with the wheel cylinder hone and sort of cleaned the edges up in here. There's some catastrophic pitting in there. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say catastrophic. I think it's good enough for a compressor. If it was a motor, that would be too far gone. But in terms of a compressor, the tolerances can be really slack. And it'll just be increased crankcase pressure because it'll blow back into there. But it'll still work, so. I guess I'll hone this one out a little bit better and then reassemble it and see what happens. Well, before I assemble it, I got to clean the valves out of this thing. You can see that all these are called, I guess, the reed valves, almost like a reed valve. They act similar to a reed valve. They're just a one-way check valve, and there's a spring. These just float up and down. Sorry, these float up and down, and the spring just pushes it shut. So this is really cheesy. This little tiny thin piece of steel, you know, how many times can that go back and forth between this before this just fails completely? On my big Walker Turner, it has like stellite, looks like a silver dollar, but super hardened, and they float up and down. But then I have a Kellogg 321 and the valves are just massive in it. This is just a little cheesy thing. But I need to clean these up and then reassemble it, so let me do that. Yeah, it sounds like those valves are working now. Alright, so this is an exercise in getting ahead of oneself. What I had done is I just went through all the motions of disassembling. You know, the apparent problem to me was that the compressor was bad and it needed to be reworked. So, you know, I did that. But what I failed to do is check the darn motor. The motor doesn't work. It just hums, so it might have a bad capacitor. It might... The moral of the story here is, don't be an idiot like me. What I should have done is, the first thing I should have done was check the motor to see if that was good, and then proceed to check this, because that's easy to check. You just plug it in. And here I've gone through all the motions of you know, ostensibly fixing this compressor, only to find out that this motor's shot. And I don't have another motor, so here I've wasted all this time. Okay.
Alright, so we managed to get this apart. It was really stuck on there. We had to use a puller, a large puller. I wasn't really paying attention to the time-lapse camera, so hopefully I got that shot. But we had to use a puller to get this rear housing off of here. And as I understand it, what happens is this section here is like a starting coil, or starting field, and the capacitor will come through and energize this shoe, which will in turn press on here. I guess energize some additional coils or something. Again, you know, go find a real electric motor channel if you're really interested in this stuff, because I'm not the guy for that. But then it helps start this until it ramps up speed, and then the centrifugal force opens this up and disconnects it. So that's how I understand that working. So let's go ahead and disassemble it, hook the capacitor back up, see this thing runs. Fixed starter. So we're out in the yard now, away from everybody. With air compressors, you want to be really careful, because as you store that air, you know, it's potential energy, and if something were to go wrong with this tank, you know, there's some rust on the outside of that, and probably a million reasons why we shouldn't do this. But for the sake of YouTube, we're going to plug it in and see if we can get it to work. I'm going to do two different things here. We're going to run an extension cord. Clay's got an extension cord out here, so we can plug this puppy in and let it run for a little while. Do you want to do that now, or you want to try to put some air in the tank and see if the tank... Alright, Clay says let's just let it go. So we're just going to let this sucker go. And let me get the camera set up and then we'll walk away. Alright, so there we are. It's plugged in, which means it's shut off and done what it's supposed to do. I don't know if the pressure override switch is still functioning on this, but that's something that I'd want to redo the cord and all that stuff eventually. But right now I think I'm up to like 6 air compressors, so I'm really not going to focus on spending money on something that I don't really need right now. But anyway, I'm happy that Clay and I were able to get this thing going. I probably wouldn't have delved into that motor if it weren't for, you know, his idea on that. So that's cool. You know, sometimes you need a little inspiration, because I was ready to throw in the towel on this sucker. But anyway, we've got a working compressor. So now I had a $10 working compressor, or I had a $10 broke compressor. Now I have a $10 working compressor. Anyway, these little paint sprayer style Sears are my favorite. I've got a couple different versions of these. I've got a 4-cylinder one, I've got a big 1-cylinder one, and this is now my 2-cylinder one. So anyway, it's very cool stuff, and anyway, I'm glad to have a project done and something on the books. So thanks, have a good day. Also, something new on the workbench is my new Wizard drill press. I picked this up at the auction the other day for $10. It is in remarkably good shape in terms of, you know, there's no cracks in the base or anything. You know, it's got sort of some indiscretions here on the handle, but I think that shouldn't be a big deal to fix. And I got a new lathe. Let's go check that out. So this is a Craftsman, I believe it's a model 109. Came with a 4-jaw chuck. I've got the motor for it on the bottom. Sorry, the light is horrible right now. It is missing the tool post, and I believe this should all be, you know, maybe number 1 or number 2 Morse taper, which I have quite a bit of because that's my big drill press is Morse taper 2. I also picked up, you know, this is a tilting vise. It's not anything really fancy, but those are sort of cool. And I picked up a dividing head. So this is just a Vertex. This is a Taiwanese. As I turn this is, you know, not Not like a welding positioner or anything, even though somebody's got, you can see the welding spatter on the handle. But this should be a nice addition to the milling machine. So this was a neat item to pick up from the auction. I got this for $70, and the Wizard drill press, I got that for $10. So that was a neat find, I think. But today we're looking at an air compressor that I got.